So, good morning everybody. There's I think a few people missing. They were the ones who got enlightened last night. You never know your luck. Okay. So welcome. It's another little Dhamma talk and I want to try and keep it on the path of meditation. I've talked a lot yesterday about meditation, especially in the afternoon. I talked about opening the lotus with the kindness and the awareness. But then sometimes when we are meditating, we can get frustrated somewhere. And sometimes that frustration causes a lot of pressure and disappointment, frustration. And that's one of the reasons why when we are practicing our meditation, we don't just make the mind calm. We also make use of what they call these days insight. It's insight and calm always work together. And to give you the simile which demonstrates this, there was this couple who were living in Norway. The guy was called Sam, and his partner was called Vi. So Sam and Vi had two dogs. One of those dogs was called Metta, the dog, and the other dog was called Anapana. And so one day after lunch, Sam, his surname was Atta, Sam Atta, and Vi Pasana, decided to go, I'm giving it away now, aren't I? Decided to go on a walk up Meditation Mountain. And they took their two dogs with them, Metta and Anapana Sati. And when they went up that mountain, Sam went up there because it was so peaceful and calm, so still on the top of Meditation Mountain. He just enjoyed the bliss of stillness, being away from all the problems of the world. His partner, Vipassana, she went up there with her very high-tech camera to take some photo shots, because on the top of Meditation Mountain you could see almost the whole of Norway, even Europe. It was so clean, clear, and you could see everything in the world on top of Meditation Mountain. And the two dogs. Sometimes I always think that dogs are far more wise than human beings. They went up there just for the fun, for the joy of it. They're so simple. They decided to go up Meditation Mountain for joy. So the four of them left, Sam, Vi, and the two dogs. And when they got up, halfway up Meditation Mountain, even halfway up, it was so peaceful up there, so silent, that Sam was enjoying even just this degree of stillness and peace. Because stillness and peace is very delightful. And Vi, even though they hadn't got the best view yet, but still it was fantastic how far she could see. So she was taking many insight shots of all the world laid out in front of her. But Metta, the dog, of all those four, Metta was the smartest, because Metta, the dog, was wagging her tail, as dogs do when they're really happy. And you could see that Metta the dog was also enjoying the silence and also pausing to look at the incredible view. And Anapanasati, the breath meditation, she was getting so still, so peaceful, she was almost disappearing. And when they got to the top of Meditation Mountain, wow, it was so still up there. Nothing hardly moved. And that perfect stillness, which was just there, he didn't have to hold it, didn't have to make it happen. The stillness was all over the place. He was enjoying that immensely. But he also had a pair of eyes, and it was so still up there, he also enjoyed the view, which was fantastic. As for his partner, Vi, she was just very silently taking these amazing photographs. Again, you could see forever, see everything in very clear detail. But she could also appreciate the stillness as well. So when she pressed the little button to take the photograph, she did it so softly you could hardly hear it. And Metta the dog, our Metta was sitting there wagging her tail and almost like crying in ecstasy because there was so much joy and love on top of Meditation Mountain. But Metta also had those eyes, could see the view, could also experience the stillness. And as for Anapana, she had vanished, had gone, no breath in her deep meditations. And that was the story of the 4 friends who went up on top of Meditation Mountain. And it makes the point that Samatta, what we call the peace, Vipassana, the insight, will always go together. You cannot split them up. But I added the extra that loving kindness, metta, always goes with you as well. When you're practicing meditation, the peace, the insight, and the kindness will always go together if you're practicing in the most effective, best way. And the Anapanasati disappearing, I just added that because some people asked yesterday, what happens when you get into deep meditation? The breath gets so soft and so peaceful that sometimes it's still going in and out, but you cannot discern it, you cannot perceive it. The breath is just so subtle. But there are times, especially in what we call the 4th jhana, the breath doesn't go in and out at all. You don't need a breath, you're so stable and still. And I never mentioned to you this a little kind of experiment. It's just a fortunate occurrence that when Ajahn Chah had a stroke, and the monks at that time had a meeting, and they resolved in a meeting just to let nature take its course and let just Ajahn Chah pass away. But when the king of Thailand at the time heard that, he said, no, keep him alive as a field of merit for others. And so the king paid for medical care for Ajahn Chah for many, many years until he eventually passed away. And so there was always a very highly trained medic on duty on 8-hour shifts, and also 2 or 3 monks on duty there, just helping out whenever they could. And it did happen that many times Ajahn Chah would be lying down there on the bed and would stop breathing. And sometimes the medic got a bit afraid. On this one occasion, the medic saw Ajahn Chah laying down, not breathing at all. And he started to get afraid. The monks said, leave him alone, he does this often. His breathing will start later on, he's just in a deep meditation, that's all. And the medic said, no, I've got to do something. And they said, well, Ajahn Chah's got to die one day. Yes, said the medic, but I don't want him, Ajahn Chah, to die on my shift. Because you can imagine if you've been employed by the king of Thailand and you let this famous monk die, you're in big trouble. So they had an argument, and the monks, they expressed to this doctor, or this medic, don't try and inject him with something, just let him be, but why don't you just check his oxygen level in his blood over the next couple of hours? And that's what this medic did. He just took blood samples every 5 minutes just to ensure there was enough oxygen in the blood. As long as the blood was well oxygenated, he didn't need to breathe. And this is what happened. And all the time the doctor did not know how this oxygen was getting into the blood, but the oxygen level maintained the same throughout a couple of hours. Because it wasn't done under laboratory conditions, no one could publish those results. But the word went around that this is actually what happens when you're in deep meditation. Sometimes they say the blood comes in through the pores. I don't know, it doesn't make any sense to me. The pores of the skin. But anyway, no matter how it happened, the oxygen level was stable throughout those couple of hours when there was no discernible breath happening at all. So anyway, that was just an interesting story about that. But as we do meditate, sometimes we don't need the breath. So that's why in that story I allowed Anapanasati, the breath, to disappear. When you go down the mountain, it comes back again. But one of the most important parts of that story was the importance of loving kindness and joy. Many years ago, I was just helping while somebody else was teaching a meditation retreat. And it wasn't sort of my teachings, but there was this gentleman there I got to know very well, and I just asked him, how's the retreat going? And he said, terrible. I said, why? And he said, well, I can still get into first jhana, but I just can't get into second jhana. And when he looked at me like that, he was looking at me like he just couldn't pay the electricity bill, or that he was called back to work the following morning. Or his face looked so ordinary. And straight away I realized that whatever he thought was those jhanas is not correct. Because if any of you get into even a first jhana, that's so much bliss and so much happiness. The afterglow, the best word for it, is extremely strong. You're happy for hours and days sometimes, just the first jhana. So what that actually taught me is that it's nice to be able to know these words and know that they are possible for each one of you. Actually, there are some people it's not possible for. The only people who it's not possible for, you're listening? You're paying attention, amazing, is if you have killed your mother, if you have killed your father, or you have raped and violated a bhikkhuni. There's not that many bhikkhunis around, so we have to protect them so that you can... But anyhow, that are what they call Baba Pugala, people who cannot get those jhanas. So has anyone done any of those three things here? No? Okay, so you can all get jhanas. Phew. And I say that because many people feel they can't do these things. They feel, oh, this is stuff which is too deep for me. They feel this is maybe for monks and nuns, and some even monks and nuns have difficulty. But they think, not me, I'm just a lay meditator. That's what I thought when I started teaching these things. I was told that in many places, in particular at that time, this is almost 50 years ago, in Vietnam, the monks, the Sangha there, both Mahayana Theravada, monks and nuns, they were all prohibited, banned from teaching jhanas. But eventually they turned that over and said, no, why should we do this? The reason was they thought it was just too difficult to do. But then you get rebellious monks like you know who say, why not? So we started teaching it, and many lay people can achieve and experience those states. They may be a little bit scary for you, but it's worth it. You get so much peace and happiness and also insight. Where there's samatha, there's also vipassana as well. Where there's calm, there's insight. And there's also a lot of kindness as well, a lot of joy and happiness and wanting to help and serve others. So when the mind is quite still, obviously you will see further and you will know more. Everything becomes brighter and clearer. It's like the stains on your windscreen get wiped clean so you can eventually see things. And you don't get deluded anymore. You've got the strength and the confidence not to see what you want to see, but to see what's actually there. This is what we mean by the generation of insight. What is insight? It's seeing clearly what's out there. And it's amazing just how people can think they're seeing clearly, but they're not. To emphasize that point, that again, I think I've mentioned already that one of my friends from university, became a theoretical physicist as well. That was Professor Bernard Carr, C-A-R-R. But he was also the head of the Psychic Research Society in London, and would investigate things like ghosts and other paranormal phenomena. And one of the experiments which he did, which I was very fascinated about, was what was called the flower pot experiment. One of his friends, who was also one of the top physicists in London, claimed he had discovered the secret of levitation, about things rising up into the air, just through the power of the mind. And so he told his friends, these were only lecturers, physicists, experimental physicists, theoretical physicists, in the Imperial College in London. And in that college, he told his friends and many other people from London universities, physicists, that he was going to demonstrate in the laboratory, in the lecture theatre, the how to levitate things. So this experiment, he was well known, came into the lecture theatre carrying a flower pot and put it on the bench. No wires or anything funny. And he put it down on the bench, asked to turn on the cameras, wanted to record it all to make sure if it worked, they would have proof which would last forever. Had infrared cameras, UV cameras, all sorts of stuff to record what would happen. And then after turning that all on, he asked the audience, these were all English professors, with beards and moustaches and nice little jackets and bow ties or whatever. He asked all these stuffy English professors, he needed their help to set the atmosphere for levitation to work. He wanted everyone together to start chanting the Hindu holy word, Om. And because he was one of their friends, and there was no students present, all these old professors, you never ever would start chanting Om, all together started chanting Om, 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 Om. They thought it was a joke. But as they were chanting Om, the flower pot rose into the air. It actually rose. No wires or anything. It rose up into the air, and then it settled down again. They photographed it, videoed it, it worked. And they were stunned. And then he asked the people in the audience what they thought about that, the demonstration of levitation in the lecture theatre in Imperial College, London. Imperial College is one of the top colleges. And most of them, they said, was amazing. But a couple of those witnesses, experimental physicists, who were supposed to be able to take down the data without distorting what they saw, they claimed it did not rise above the table at all. It was on the table all the time. And they showed them the videos and the photographs. Look, it rose. No, I was looking. It was on the table all the time. And that was the point of the experiment. What had actually happened was that when everybody started chanting Om, they turned on this very strong electric current to power up an electromagnet underneath the bench, which no one saw. And that was what raised the flower pot up into the air. It was just science, that's all. But I think many of you know when you have a strong current, there's the hum of the current. Such a strong current, they couldn't hide that. That's why everyone had to start chanting Om, 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 just to hide and mask the big current. But the point was that flower pot did lift up into the air and then settle back down again. The point of the experiment, even though it did happen, those professors who said it never happened, they had actually blocked it out of their conscious awareness. It can't happen. It went so much against their belief system that even their conscious awareness did not register it. It was blocked out. And that was one of the problems with what we call bare awareness. What we see, what we hear, we trust. But actually, we block out so much which we literally do not want to see. Stuff which would challenge us far too deeply, like a levitating flower pot. Even right now, if I did call an alien from Mars to come in here today and say hello to you, if I really did call an alien in, you wouldn't believe it. So it's some sort of joke. It's one of Ajahn Brahm's jokes. It's somebody dressed up. It's just some sort of holograph or something. You wouldn't see it. Because anything which challenges us so profoundly, we just cannot see. And even some of the things we add to reality, which aren't there, but which we expect to be there. And this is well demonstrated by the story of one of my friends many years ago, who also became a monk, a bhikkhu with Ajahn Chah, and then went over to UK as a monk. Many of you may know him if you know the monk Sangha for a long time. His name was Ajahn Anando. And his story was that he was born in Buffalo, up in New York State, and he was a really tough guy. He said he joined one of the gangs there, where he said they would use motorbike chains to beat the enemy up. He said he called it playing for keeps. He was a very nasty man when he was young. And then he joined the US Marines. He volunteered because he wanted to get tougher. And he was sent to Vietnam. He was fighting in that war. And one of his friends got a shot in the foot. And this man, Ananda, he wasn't called that name then. It was Klein, I think it was Stephen Klein. Anyway, he was laughing at his friend's wound. It was supposed to be called the $1 million injury. He'd be cashiered out of the US Marines and given a pension for the rest of his life. So he was laughing at him, and because he was laughing, he wasn't aware at all, and he got shot in the back of the head. He took a bullet in the back of his skull. He got evacuated, and after he got to the field hospital and had the operation to take off the damaged part of his brain. You know, he has like a concave dent in his skull. I remember when it was a shaving time for monks, once a fortnight, sometimes we would help each other shave. He was the most difficult head to shave. Instead of like being convex like most people's heads, he had a big dent in the back of his head. So anyway, and he was a very tough guy. I like telling this story as well. But one day, he was only just a couple of years as a monk. I think I was only just freshly ordained. We were doing some chanting in the monastery. And when we do chanting in this forest tradition, it's always supposed to be just a monotone. Yasa Bhagava Arahang Samma Sa. Like we don't go up and down, we don't make it sonorous. But there is one chant which is usually done in a bit more musical. Paritavana metang sameta badanta. And usually we wouldn't do that because we were forest monks. But he chanted it melodiously. And afterwards all the monks told him off. That's not how you're supposed to do it. Don't do that anymore, ever again. We're forest monks. And you could see that he was just so disappointed. He spent so much time learning that chant and chanting it melodiously. And he was so just disappointed. And I was only a new monk there, so I could not say anything out loud. I just whispered to him. So that was a chant for inviting heavenly beings to come into this ceremony. And I said, if I was a heavenly being, I would have come. That was lovely. And just that little bit of friendship, those couple of words, made him a friend for life. It was weird, because that's what he needed. And out of kindness, you gave that to him. And he would always look after me. And having a tough friend like that was really helpful. But anyhow, that he told me many stories, and one of those stories was that before he became a monk, after he'd had his operation, I should have said that at that operation, the doctor said, you're a Marine, you're tough. So we just have to let you know that we had to, in surgery, take out that part of the brain which is used for sight. They said that when the bandages are taken off, you'll be blind. You won't be able to see, you've lost your sight. And even though he was a tough guy, that was a bit much for him. And he told me, I've got no doubt, that he promised himself that if that was true and he couldn't see, he would kill himself. He would commit suicide. He said life would not be worth living. And when they took those bandages off, he was so surprised and so uplifted, he could see. His sight was okay. And he said he was like on a natural high for about a year afterwards. He had $1,000 a month pension. It was a lot in those days. He could see and he was reasonably healthy. But he said the interesting part of this story was, had nothing to do, just playing around all day. And he joined in a baseball game. And somebody hit the ball in his direction. It was an easy catch for a fit young man. So he was following the ball through the air. And then the ball vanished. It just disappeared, went out of existence. And then it came back again, further along its trajectory. That's how he discovered he had a blind spot. But how a blind spot looked to someone who has one, you don't notice. It's not like a black sort of smudge on the middle of your vision. What the brain does, it actually adds the clouds, the sky, what it thinks should be there. It extrapolates, as they say. So if the wall over there, if I had a blind spot, you still see the pale yellow wall. But then if a bird flew across it, then the bird would disappear at the beginning of the blind spot and appear at the other end of it. The mind could actually make what it expected to be there, but something unusual it would not be able to see. And that's how we found out what a blind spot is. The reason we call it blind spot is because you don't see it. You don't even think it's there. It's only through the inference you find it's there. And that is one of the things which we call bare perception, bare awareness. Can you even trust that? That's one of the reasons why wisdom is not easy. Why many people say they're wise, but they argue with one another. I could never figure that one out. Why is it that so many wise, well-educated people, they can't agree on what's the truth? All they need to do is ask me and I'll tell them what the truth is. I'm only joking. But you can see what I'm getting at there. How do we have wisdom? And how can we trust that what we see is really there? We don't add or take away from the reality. We don't add what we expect to be there, what we want to be there. We see things truly. That's a very important point to, again, let people know that the only way you can trust your wisdom is that you're so peaceful you neither add nor subtract to what you are experiencing. I'll give you another demonstration of that now. Is there any mathematics professors here or teachers? Oh, that's good. Listen carefully. A very simple question. 26 sheep in a field. 10 die. How many survive? That's the wrong answer. I now say it slowly. 20 sick sheep in a field. You can see what happens there. That's actually what I said. But I say it a little bit fast. We sort of almost infer that means 26. But it was 20 sick sheep. That's why they died. They were sick. So because of that, that's just a little indication of how we think we know what we're talking about or we're thinking about. We come to conclusions and they are not true. Another one I did many years ago, because I was a member of the Thai Sangha, and at that time, many years ago, there were many Thai monks were found to have had mistresses that were breaking their precepts. And because of that, many had to disrobe. A bit scandalous, not bit, actually very scandalous. But there was also the case that monks are supposed to be honest. So at a big hall where I teach in Perth, I don't know if you were there at the time, Ajahn, when I made my confession. I told everybody one Friday evening, about 200 people there, I said, that monks are supposed to keep their rules and be good monks. And I put my head down and said, but it's really important to be honest with you all and to confess. I said, many years ago, I confessed, I spent some of the happiest days of my life, honestly, hugging and kissing another man's wife. Did you hear that? I was hugging, I loved her, and she was married to somebody else. Honestly. That woman was my mum. She was married to my dad. She was another man's wife. Have you heard that before? No, what a shame. But when I said that the first time, some of my long-term disciples, they were heading for the door. Oh no, not Ajahn Brahm as well. But I said that because sometimes we hear things, we jump to conclusions, and those conclusions are totally wrong. It's one of the reasons why real insight and understanding goes much deeper than what you think is obvious. You see deeper into things. To be able to do that, you have to have stillness. You don't rush to conclusions. And number two, you have much more than the evidence in front of you. You can actually see. You never thought that was true. One of the reasons, you may have heard this before, but also you know me. you know me, I'm up to something, up to some sort of trick. Of course, that's what happens. So, wisdom is not just believing what you see. It's actually having a strong mind so you can actually see things clearly. Not what you want to see, what's actually there. Another of those similes for wisdom and insight was one of the experiences I had as a young man, as only 18 years of age. It was like a gap year after getting my scholarship to go to Cambridge. I had about 9 months which had nothing to do. So I got a job, cheap jobs, saved up, went to the United States, got bored out of my head in the United States in 1969, but then decided to go south to Central America. I always wanted to see something different, and the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula in Central America were always fascinating for me. Has any of you ever been to the Yucatan? Guatemala, Belize? Oh, great. You know what it's like. This was in 1969. And so just going down on fishing boats and trucks and any sort of transport you could get to go into the middle of the jungle, into the Yucatan, into Tikal, the big ancient Mayan civilization center. It took about 3 days to get there. And when you travel through rainforests, you find out they make a track through the rainforest for the trucks, the lorries or whatever. But it's so vibrant and alive that it soon gets covered up by the branches of trees or by vines. It always was like going through tunnels of greenery. Until eventually, when I got there, I never realized for about 3 days I had not seen the horizon. All I saw was tunnels. So what happened when I first got to the place, and there's only one other archaeologist which I saw in that area. It was not protected at all. And not like archaeological sites these days where you probably have to pay a fee and just go with a tour guide and be told not to touch this, not to touch that. I decided, because I was only an 18-year-old man and no one else was around, to actually climb to the top of one of those pyramids just to see what was there. I had no clue what I was doing. And that was important. I wasn't told what to believe. When you got to the top of those pyramids, there was a little like hut, like a little shed or something on the top. But what really fascinated me, when I got to the top, number one, the air was clean. It's not so sort of muggy and sort of humid like in the bottom of the forest. And there was a wind. The wind was flowing over the top of the forest, so you could actually feel it. And number three, because I was now above the tree line, I could actually see forever. I could actually see the journey which I'd made over the last day or two, because in those days I never knew anything like Google Maps. But that's what it was like. You were high up and you could see the town, little island town of Flores, which I spent the night before, and all the long, tortuous way which I had travelled. You had a view of your world, and also looking out to see infinity in all directions, with nothing between you and infinity. That's what it felt like. I kind of imagined what it must have been like for a young man or young woman going to some sort of religious ceremony, being taken up this pyramid by some holy woman or holy man. And when you get to the top, that's what you would see. I'd only seen tunnels for 3 days. But if you've seen only tunnels for your whole life, you've never seen long distances. can imagine the metaphor of seeing forever. And the idea nothing between you and the infinite. And seeing down below, that's where you've been living all your life. That was kind of like a good metaphor of what insight is. You have to get some sort of pyramid, some sort of tower, to rise above your normal world, your family, your work, your city, wherever you live, to get above it and out of it. The air is more clear, more peaceful, more beautiful, and it's like you can see forever. You see how it all fits in. You get like insight. So you can go on top of a mountain here in Norway, but it looks, the weather is so cloudy, you'd be lucky to see anything. And is that the case? No, it's cloudy today. Or you go up the top of a mountain and you find there is a restaurant on top. Or you go on top of the mountain and you find there's a mobile phone tower on top. Is that the case? Okay, beginning to, maybe some of it is true. But anyway, one of the best mountains or towers to climb, again, is the one inside of meditation. Becoming so still, you let go of your world, of all the things which you have to do, all the things which you have to think of, your responsibilities and duties, all of your relations and friends you have to deal with. All of those things, to be able to get away from it all just for a short time. And when you do have some peace and stillness from these people and from you and from your mobile phones, I'm not sure if I mentioned this the first day or I mentioned this over in UK. How many of you own a mobile phone? How many of the mobile phones own you? That's more true, isn't it? You don't own the phone. Your phone is a boss. It rings and you have to answer it. That's why they used to call those mobile phones, what do they used to call them? Cell phones. They keep you in a cell, a prison. And you celebrate how many bars you have on your phone. You think that means you got good reception. It means you're more in jail. So anyway, that this is becoming free from that, just for a short while. And that gives you that clarity, like going up the mountain. And the other thing which I like about that simile is like you can not just see where you've come from, you can see the area in which you live, but not being part of it. But you can also have this wonderful sense, you can see infinity in all directions, and the spiritual, the truth, the Dhamma, without any one between you and that Dhamma. You see it directly for yourself. You don't go through an interpreter, someone telling you what is true, telling you what to believe. The only job of a teacher, a meditation teacher, is, as I said, to empower you, to give you that clarity of mind, that power of mind, to see these things for yourself. And to argue with the teacher if you feel like, we've got it wrong. It's up to you to see for yourself that beautiful truth. So this is actually what wisdom really means. But on the way to that wisdom, we always have these minor wisdoms. Little things like how to meditate. And one of the first things I hope you're going to take away from this short retreat is one of the most important things you get insight into is what kindness is. Many people assume they know what kindness is. We chant the loving kindness sutta. We try and be kind to all beings and kind to this and kind to that. Do you really know what kindness is? You know what it is, by what it does. That's one of the reasons when we did that scan of the body, you get to a part of your body which is sick, which is injured, which is hurting. If it really is kindness, it relaxes everything. And that part of your body expands, gets at ease, and you feel just so healed. If that's what happens, that is kindness. But we use kindness in all sorts of other ways. I can't resist this because one of the last times I came here to Oslo, that I was picked up at the airport. I forget exactly who picked me up from the airport, but got into their car, and unfortunately one of the boom gates of the car park at the airport was stuck. And there was a line of about 5 or 6 cars trying to get out. Was it any of you who picked me up that time? I know you weren't here at the time, Benonito, somebody else. So it was stuck. So I was really tired, and I wanted to get to where I was supposed to get going to as soon as possible. So I got out of the car, walked up to the boom gate, and gave it loving kindness. And it opened up. It's a very good entry to this country. The people who I was with were very impressed. Or on another time, we have a youth group over in Perth. Were you there at that time, Juanito, with the Kalyan Metta group and Ronnie when she couldn't open the boot of her car? No. Okay. That they were just about finished off their youth group at our temple. They were just about to go to the beach afterwards. It was a sunny day. And they had met each other, discussing some Dharma, doing some meditation, and then they're going to the beach to enjoy the evening. Unfortunately, the boot of their car was locked. And in the boot of their car was some stuff which they needed to get out. And they'd been trying for about half an hour, trying to open the boot. Nothing was happening. So as I was coming past, they said, "Oh, here's Ajahn Brahm. I'm sure he can open the boot of this car with his powers." And so the owner of the car, Ronnie, she was a Indonesian but lived in Perth a long time. She said to me, "Can you open the car for us? We've been trying for the last half an hour." And I looked at her and I said, "I will open the door of that boot of that car if you will promise to become a fully ordained Buddhist nun." And heedlessly, she said, "Yes." And then he used a loving kindness, opened the boot of the car straight away. He said, "Ah! I didn't mean that." You remember that story? Hi, Chanda? Yeah. She didn't really want to be a Buddhist nun. Not yet, anyway. But I opened the car and made her promise in front of her friends. "Ah, I got you." And then afterwards, you know what she did? There was another lady in that youth group, only about in her early 20s, who was a lawyer. And she said, yes, she did promise to become a fully ordained Buddhist bhikkhuni, but she never said when. That's unfair. Never trust lawyers, they really get you into trouble. Or get you out of trouble in that case, so we all laughed. But that's sometimes the power of loving kindness. Honestly, it's sometimes weird, but very, very powerful. So anyway, you know what loving kindness is on your own body, when you can focus on a part of your body and it relaxes and heals up. You know what kindness is, because you can spread it to your own body or to other people's body, and it becomes irresistible. When I used to do meditation retreats, long meditation retreats, very often the last day of the retreat, when people's meditation was quite strong, I did ask them to do this loving kindness meditation for about half an hour, really get the energy up. And first of all, spreading loving kindness to just ordinary objects, sometimes even imaginary objects, just to get it strong. And then towards the end of the meditation, I would say, now with your eyes closed, just imagine someone who's very close to you. Maybe a mother, or a father, or a child, or a good friend who's really suffering. Imagine them, and then give them all this incredibly powerful loving kindness. And then just really keep going at it. You've been meditating for 9 days now. You should have some energy and power. And then I said, I would look at the clock, 10 minutes to 10. And I would note it down, and then I'd take them out of the meditation. And I said, you spread that loving kindness to that person at 9:50 a.m. When you go home this evening, give them a call. Ask, oh, I just was thinking about you. How are you? And just make ordinary conversation. Said, if you don't mind me asking, what were you doing at 10 minutes to 10 this morning? The reason I don't do this anymore was because I used to get all these phone calls in the evening. Ajahn Brahm, it worked. It worked. They said, for no reason whatsoever, they were thinking about me. And that's the reason I don't do it anymore. Because it works. How can that happen? You're here, and there may be the other side of the world. We can still contact them that way. This is where you get the insight into what this mind is and what it can do. I don't know how many of you may have had a cat or a dog, and you're away somewhere, and your poor cat or dog dies, gets hit by a car or something. You know it straight away. There was this famous story someone told me. There was one of the top veterinary surgeons, over in the city of Melbourne. It was a long weekend. So, he left his house, got in his car, and went into the countryside. His friends and he were having a party over the long weekend. And halfway on the journey, in the middle of nowhere, he was overcome with this real great sadness. And he just couldn't keep on driving. He had to go into the emergency stopping lane on this motorway and just cry for about 10 minutes. He didn't know why on earth he was overcome by this sadness. And eventually, he just used his maleness to get over it, as they say. And then when he was able to drive, he carried on his journey. And of course, you probably guessed, when he got to the destination, his friends were waiting for him with a message. Exactly that time, his dear dog had run into the road, got run over and died. That exact time. And he felt it so strongly, straight away. How does that happen? The dogs don't have emails. They don't have mobile phones. But you know that something terrible has happened. So this is actually where we start to get the insights into know what our mind is doing and how powerful it is. How you can get information. So there's many types of insights. One of the other insights, I'll talk more about it later on, is actually understanding where you come from. We were asked a question last night, what's the difference between reincarnation and rebirth? Many people in this world today, they call it secular Buddhism. And anything to do with rebirth, no, you can't prove that. Yes, you can. As a scientist, yes, you can prove the truth of rebirth. You can prove it for yourself, which is the best proof of all. In these meditations, when you get peaceful, you ask yourself the question, what is my earliest memory? If your meditation is deep and you are peaceful and still, If it's going to work, it works straight away. You get a memory come back from a long time ago. And that memory is clear. It's like you're re-experiencing it. It's like you're that little girl or that little boy in a life before. And you can ask yourself, what is your name? Where do you live? What is this? It's weird, but it happens. And as the monks and nuns know, I'm not allowed by my rules to say too much about these deep experiences. But I think I've also mentioned to you, I know the loopholes. And so one of the things which I've said many times to people, on one occasion when I did this meditation practice of asking myself, what's my earliest memory? I was sitting down, a very nice meditation over in Perth. Then at the end of that meditation, what's my earliest memory? And straight away, an image came up, and I could recognize it immediately. It wasn't hazy. It wasn't, oh no, what is this? Clear recognition immediately. This was me as a baby. I don't know how many weeks old, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 weeks old, in a pram, this little cart on wheels which your mother would put you in and would push you back and forwards, when she went shopping and stuff. It was my pram. And as soon as I recognized that, you could recognize and look around and experience what that pram was. In those days, it was just a black pram. It had little white, what would you call it, sheets on it and a pillow. And the one thing I remember there, stretched along the front of the pram, was this my favourite toy as a baby. It wasn't sort of very expensive because we were poor. It was I still don't know whether it was plastic or porcelain or something, but it was a pig, a light blue in colour, which my mother called Porky the Pig, and it had some beans inside so she could rattle it. And I loved that little pig when I was a little baby. And you could recall it clearly. Another thing which was strange was that I recognized my mother by her fragrance, by her smell. I didn't know exactly what she looked like. I kind of knew, but the most important thing about her was her smell. That's how I knew that was my mum. And that kind of surprised me, but when I told people about that afterwards, there was a couple of doctors, medics, or I don't know, the people who understand just how babies grow. They were surprised, because that is one of the first parts of the brain which develops for a baby. And I know that to be true because I can even remember it now. This is how you recognize your surroundings and the people who are important to you in your life, by how they smell. Sight is not fully developed yet. Hearing, not really. But smell is a dominant sense. So I tell you, if ever you have kids, or those people, if you're too old to have kids, but your kids have kids, you have your first grandkids, never change your scent once you have a kid. They won't recognize who you are. Okay, that's a bit of a joke, but it's true. So anyway, all those interesting insights come up. And of course people can argue, you're just fantasizing Ajahn Brahm with some sort of drugs or whatever, but no. These are real experiences. You can argue with me forever. When it's your own personal experience, there's no way you can deny that. You go back early if you want. Find out who you were before. You get some interesting examples of what happens then. I'll just tell one story. This was of this. These are people who were regressed through hypnotism, not through meditation. But there was this young girl in Sydney, and she was anorexic. You know what an anorexic is, don't you? You know, once when I first checked out what does that word mean, anorexia, it means you look in the mirror and you think you're fat. And I realised that's what I have. And I remember this guy, I forget where he was. He was really fat, had his T-shirt on. And the slogan on the T-shirt, he was really fat, was "I beat anorexia." This fat guy. Anyway, this was a lady, a young girl, who had terrible anorexia, nothing could fix it. And basically she was really in danger of losing her life. So as a last resort, her mother took her to see one of these hypnotherapists. And because she was so young, her mother had to be with her, legally for this procedure to happen. Unfortunately, this young lady, I think she was maybe 16, not 18, this young lady was easy to hypnotize. And when she was regressed into her previous life, she said that she was the younger sister of this other, of her elder sister. She was one of two daughters of this family. And her elder sister was more beautiful, more attractive than she was. And they both fell in love with the same guy. And she loved that guy, and her elder sister loved that guy. And the guy chose the elder sister and married her sister, and she was so heartbroken she committed suicide. She said, "That was my last life. I suffered so much because I wasn't pretty enough. And in this year life, I'm trying to be thin at all costs. Just because I think that may make me more attractive." It's kind of an interesting story, but not really special. But then the mother, when she was listening to this, because she had to be there, she was going hysterical, crying and sobbing. And this poor therapist had to deal with two people at the same time. And so when she took the daughter out of hypnosis, then she told the mother and said, "Why are you so hysterical?" She said, "I was that sister. I never told my daughter that before she was born, I had a younger sister and she committed suicide because we both fell in love with the same guy. That guy's her father, my husband. And she's come back to the same family." That's weird, but that's actually what happened. Anyhow, I'll leave that with you because it's now 10 o'clock. We'll have a quarter of an hour break and then we'll do a guided meditation. And maybe we'll find out who you were before. Okay, let's have a break.